Hello everyone, Marcio Cardoso again here, and this video is going to be about the issue of media. Fake news media. Well, not quite fake news. If you've seen any of my videos already, you probably already know, and if you haven't, not a big Donald Trump fan. So when I call the media, I don't really look at them as fake news. But I'm going to use a different term with the media. Selective news. If Trump used that term, then I might look at him and say, Mr. President, you have a point there. The media. What a quagmire. It's as much of a problem, part of the problem in our country right now, as it is a part of the solution. It's like they take a step forward and a step back. Not one step forward, two steps back, just one step forward, then one step back. They're trading places. They're just good and bad at the same time. Now more than ever, it is so vital for our media to get the information right. But now more than ever, it's vital that the media gets their information first. I'll never forget when I saw this interview. Can't remember who, but that's not really the point. It was this news media person, and it was an interview on CNN. And he was telling the person interviewing on CNN that it was vital that we get information. When we do media stuff, we got to be fast and right. And then the CNN guy said, but it's more important to be right, right? And the other man goes, yeah, of course. Let's take a step back first. For so long in this country, our media was 3 channels. That was it. It was 3 channels, basically. Maybe a couple more. But the main channels were CBS, NBC, ABC. And you have also PBS. Later on came Fox, not Fox News, just Fox. And that was it. That was our media. And certain times of the day, they were going to tell the news. They had a certain time of the day, half an hour or so, where you would have the national news hosts. For CBS, for so long, it was Walter Cronkite. I'm more familiar with Dan Rather. For NBC, it was Edward R. Murrow. I'm a little more familiar with Tom Brokaw, Brian Williams. Now we got Lester Holt. ABC for so long at Peter Jennings. Now I think it's Dan Muir. And that's the way it was, as Cronkite said. That's the way it is. That's the way it was. They would just tell the news as facts. They would always try to be factual, right. It was more important that they be right. And that's the right way to do things. That's the embodiment of a free press, is to make sure you're presenting the information accurately. As I've said in other videos before, with great power comes responsibility. The media had all this power, but they were responsible about it. They wanted to make sure the information was correct. But then the late 70s came around, 1979 to be exact, and something changed. And that something was the cable news network, CNN. And CNN was doing what the big channels were doing, what the ABC, CBS, and Fox were doing. CNN was doing it, but unlike those other networks that were only doing it a couple hours a day, and then the other hours of the day, you're getting entertainment, you're getting infomercials, other programs, you're watching maybe a football game. Well, CNN is different because CNN is just news, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Non-stop news. Not half an hour or an hour a day. Not half an hour for the national news, half an hour for the local news. Done. Now go watch your football or go watch your favorite soap opera. No. 24/7 news. And CNN had to make sure that they consistently filled time with news. And for a long time, I think CNN did a good job of doing it. They brought up different interesting new news stories that you might not have gotten in the big networks because they had more time to cover it. But then another big year came, and that was 1996. Certain people with a lot of wealth, saw what CNN was doing. And unlike the big main networks of CBS and NBC and ABC, who were really competing with each other, CNN was really its own entity, not being, not really in competition with anybody for about, if I'm doing my math correctly, about 17 years. And there were a couple people that said, let's change the game. The main one, is Rupert Murdoch. And he really changed the game when he brought forth the Fox News channel. And then you had others following suit with the creation of networks like MSNBC as well. More recently, we've had other networks like Headline News Network, which was kind of part of CNN, but now it's kind of its own entity. We have The Blaze, which is like a Fox News wannabe channel started up by Glenn Beck. But 1996 was when the floodgates opened for 24/7 news media networks. When Fox News and MSNBC came in to challenge CNN. So now you had a big three of 24/7 news media, not the ABC, CBS, NBCs of the world. Now it's the big three of CNN, one, Fox News, and then MSNBC. This is a different kind of media. And of course, it came all about, all those three networks ready to go in the mid-90s, just in time for the Bill Clinton impeachment saga. And these networks started to cover news differently. In my opinion, they chose what they needed to cover and what they needed to dwell on. And they did that because they had to, because it became a competition. It's all about being number one, right? We're a capitalistic society. And for so long, when you only had three networks on television, yeah, there was competition, but because there was only two other channels to compete with, as long as you stayed the course and did a decent job with your programming, you delivered news accurately, correctly, holistically, if you will, you were going to get ratings because there was only two other channels. But when CNN comes along at the beginning of the cable revolution, when multiple channels come through, and CNN has to fight for ratings. At least CNN knew that when it came to 24/7 news, they were the only game in town. But there were other major networks coming on, like MTV, ESPN, and you're competing for viewers. And then when the mid-90s come in, it's a whole different ballgame, because now CNN has to compete with viewers for news and politics, because now Fox News and MSNBC are coming in to compete with you. And so naturally, what's happened is our media has become much more selective in its news, particularly, in my opinion, those three networks, CNN, MSNBC, and Fox. They're all guilty of this. They're very selective in what they want to show for coverage because they want to show whatever gets them the most ratings. It's not about even being right or being honest. It's about, in many cases, being fast or first, so you can get the eyeballs on your channel first. Because if you can get to a certain story that you know is going to get people to talk, like first, then they're going to be staying on your channel because you got them. Why change the channel? You got them hooked. And it just seems like on so many issues, that's what it's all about, is what gets ratings. Case in point, the 2016 presidential election. Don't really care for the guy, but I got to give him credit. Donald Trump completely played the media. Always saying outlandish things almost all the time. And because of that, the media almost always covered his rallies, almost always would say yes to or would want to conduct phone interviews with him because you never know what he was going to say. And if you're a smart journalist, you would say, a lot of this stuff is fluff, a lot of this stuff is hot air, steam. Let's make sure that we cover the other candidates as well. Let's make sure that we give them airtime as well. But no, they gave Trump so much free airtime because he drew ratings. And look at CNN, Fox, and MSNBC now. They're all ratings bonanzas. They're all making tons of money because their ratings are through the roof because they're covering Trump ad nauseum and all the crazy things that he's saying. Meanwhile, a lot of important issues that need to be discussed don't get discussed. I'll give you proof. Just the other day, there was a forum or a town hall on healthcare, Medicare, held by Bernie Sanders. And wasn't on any of those networks. It was done online. Because Bernie Sanders knew that there's no way that CNN or certainly Fox or even MSNBC would want to waste an hour, in their minds, waste an hour covering that stuff. Because for them, that's not going to draw ratings. That's not going to draw views. What draws views is Trump saying, she had blood coming out of her eyes or wherever. Or, there were some very fine people on both sides of the Nazi debate. It's all about ratings. It's all about making money. And because it's all about making money, the important things that matter to a lot of people, which aren't always the sexiest things to talk about, don't get talked about. And that's why they get ignored. And that's why people are frustrated with the media, because the bread and butter issues, they don't get discussed. And so when Trump says fake news, people go, yeah, because the media doesn't cover the important stuff. Fake news, it's catchy. It's easy for the news people to catch on to. But it's really selective news that these corporate media outlets focus on. And that's why if Trump said selective news, then I would say, now he's on to something. They're not fake. A lot of times these media outlets, they're trying to say things that are accurate and true, even to this day. Well, for the most part. I'm still skeptical in some of the things that get presented out by Fox News. Not everybody. There's some good journalism going on even in Fox News. And then there's some people who just want, ratings. But MSNBC and CNN, especially now CNN, I think, are becoming more guilty of that as ever. They're reaching Fox News level, in my opinion. And that's a problem. Because the important issues that need to be covered, which I'm trying to talk about, and I've mentioned in previous videos and will continue to mention in videos that will be released in the ensuing days or so, they don't get talked about on TV. That's kind of why I'm doing this stuff on YouTube, because the corporate media, the 24/7 media especially, doesn't talk about it. Sometimes you'll hear these things on the main networks, NBC, CBS, but again, they only have so much time to cover. So to me, they're not really at fault. Certainly not as much at fault as CNN and Fox News and MSNBC are. And that's a real shame. Because instead of focusing on the bread and butter issues, we get caught into the soap opera that is the White House, as the White House turns. And the stuff that's important, that matters, gets ignored, gets swept under the rug, and doesn't get talked about. And whenever it does get brought up, it immediately gets attacked. Like, oh, that's a socialist thing. Oh, that's a thing that we don't need to talk about that. And there's not enough time to really talk about it because, admittedly, it's not always the sexiest stuff to talk about. Unfortunately, because that's the case, it gets ignored completely. And we all wonder why we're in this constant cycle of nothing ever gets done, and why people have felt that way for so long. That's why people are fed up with the media. Not because it's fake news, but because it's selective. It's selecting news stories that make money, that deliver ratings, as opposed to helping people with their lives. Thank you for watching.